The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
Oh, happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to Scorebox. I'm Steve Sedgwick, and these are your headlines. Market milestones yet again. The S&P 500 topping 6,000, actually for the first time, whilst the Dow rallies more than 300 points to close above the 44,000 mark as the momentum from Donald Trump's election victory rolls on. Investors are piling in on crypto markets as Bitcoin closes in on $90,000 mark and Coinbase pops nearly 20%. Sources tell NBC that Senator Marco Rubio is likely to become Donald Trump's top diplomat, with the president-elect also said to have tapped the China hawk Mike Waltz as his national security advisor. And shares in Asian chipmakers drop as concerns over looming US protectionist measures mount, prompting South Korea to unveil stimulus measures for its domestic producers. We're going to get the view from Europe when we hear from the Infineon CFO this hour. It's extraordinary, the job of most market commentators at the moment. And our dear friend of the show, Carl Weinberg of High Frequency Economic, has really typified it. If I may just do this before we get to Silver as well, because it's quite interesting. He said, everyone would like us to write about the likely course of economic policy under the incoming Trump administration. And you could read for that what the markets are going to do, what stocks are going to do, what everything's going to do. But he says, well, we can't do that because no one can predict with any certainty what these policies will be or when they might be implemented. He then goes on to write about it for the next 3 pages. And I think that's the problem, isn't it, as well? We don't know, which is, I guess, making the markets so exciting, which is why we've got our most exciting reporter at the wall for the markets. Good morning to you, Sylvia.
Very good morning, Steve. Indeed, it doesn't matter really whether we know to what extent Donald Trump, what he's going to do next. Ultimately, we have been witnessing at the Trump trades. Investors very much focus on what the new presidency is going to mean for the markets. And so far, even if we don't have all the detail, investors seem to be enjoying it. Look at this. We saw once again a strong performance on Wall Street yesterday. We started the week on a very positive note. We had all the Dow, the S&P, the Nasdaq, all the 3 major indices posting fresh all-time intraday highs. So clearly here, still a lot of momentum behind U.S. equities. But let me take you to some of the assets that have actually performed very closely related to the Trump trades. For instance, when you look at Tesla, look at the shares. Up almost 9%. We know that the correlation here between how close Elon Musk is with the next president, with Donald Trump, has propelled the stock over the last couple of days in the wake of the election, and that continues to be the case. Now, another part of the market where we have seen a strong Trump trade is in the cryptocurrency space. Looking at Bitcoin, we are trading quite closely to the $90,000 mark. We continue to see new records for the cryptocurrency, indeed because investors believe that Donald Trump is going to be good for the cryptocurrency space. We'll find out when he actually becomes president. Now, let me take you to the dollar crosses as well to understand what has happened in the currency space. Continuing with the dynamics of the Trump trade, we have seen a strong dollar. Yesterday, we saw the dollar index up 0.4%. At this stage, we are seeing weakness for the euro, for sterling. In early hours this morning, the dollar continuing to weaken against the Japanese yen at this stage, but just marginal moves there. Now, let me take you as well to the treasury space. Yesterday, no action in terms of the bond market. It was Veterans Day, so the treasuries were closed yesterday. We are now back at trading in Asian hours, and indeed looking at the 10-year treasury yield at this stage moving higher at 4.33%. In terms of the commodity space, let's get a check on what's happening there. We are seeing oil prices moving slightly lower at this stage. WTI trading at 67, I should say, dollar a barrel at this stage, and Brent trading at $71 a barrel. I want to take as well to the performance in Asia, what we have seen so far this morning. One of the dynamics when you think about Asian equities has been the recent disappointment among investors in terms of the stimulus measures announced by the Chinese authorities. The investors very much trying to understand whether China is going to do more to support the economy. At this stage, we continue to see downward pressure for some of the Chinese equities. Hang Seng down almost 3%, Shanghai Composite also down almost 1%. But let's get a check in the chipmaker world as well. This has been a fascinating part of the market. We have heard in Europe over the last 24 hours some chip makers actually making the comments that the protectionist measures are a problem for their business. South Korea, Japan have announced new measures for some of the chip makers in their own countries as well, highlighting how important this industry is for their economies. At this stage, we are seeing pressure on some of those Asia ship makers, looking, for instance, at TSMC down more than 3%. Also, and in Korea, we're moving lower despite the measures announced by the government, Steve.
Lovely summary. Thank you very much indeed. I know you've been conducting a very important interview as well beforehand with Infineon. So, hey, look at this. You'll like this, viewers. I've just had a look. I'm going to get to Sandy in a few moments with this as well. Nvidia, hottest stock in the world of AI. Wait for it, everybody. Trades on 37 times forward. Oh, that sounds tasty, doesn't it? It's nothing. It's a drop in the ocean. Guess what Tesla trades on? I wonder if Sandy Brager knows, actually. Just get Chief Client Officer at Aspirant. Sandy, some of these trades are looking extraordinary. Nvidia, we get it. It's right at the nucleus of everything we're excited about. Tesla, I get that too, to a certain degree, but it's trading at 101 times forward. I don't know whether to hold my nose, close my eyes, I don't know what to do. Sandy, tell us.
Steve, we're living in wild times. It's certainly an exciting period to be an equity investor, with stocks in the United States continuing to go up. Not only those large cap growth stocks, but also small caps as well. And what we're telling our clients, who are corporate executives, family business owners, and entrepreneurs, is to be thoughtfully diversified. And that's what we're doing in their portfolios. We don't think it's the time to be loading up on any one particular asset class. And in fact, based on where valuations are today, we prefer stocks that haven't risen as much, especially in the value and smaller cap areas of the United States market.
I hear you. Thoughtfully that is brilliant, Sandy. Thoughtfully diversified. If only I could do that as well. But when I mean, I'll just get you back on growth, then we'll get on to other stuff as well. But I get why people are buying Tesla. He has the ear of the president. He might even be in the administration as well. But he's got about 5 different companies now that he's CEO of as well. He's distracted with Twitter as well. You've got the most vicious environment for making electric vehicles that we've ever seen. The others are coming up the rails, especially the Chinese as well, even with the tariffs that are going on the Chinese vehicles. And it's a brilliant battery company. I get that. But don't we have to be a bit worried when we see 101 times forward PE on a hottish stock? It's not like Nvidia where it's kind of everyone has to go through it.
That's right. And price matters. That's what you're pointing out. It matters a lot. And we would say your money's better allocated toward asset classes and stocks that just haven't risen as much. Maybe Tesla will grow into those earnings, but chances are you'll see some better returns at this point from other investments in the stock market.
Let's go there. Let's get to the thoughtfully diversified companies. Come on. I presume we're looking at a lot of kind of more mature stocks where the valuations are nowhere near what we've seen on growth as well. Are we looking Russell 2K? Where are we looking, Sandy?
We're looking at everything, Steve. So first of all, thoughtful diversification. We do think bonds deserve a place in portfolios. They've been pretty ho-hum over the last week. The stock market, or the bond market, was closed here in the United States on Monday. So we'll see what happens as the week comes ahead. But we do expect them to play a more traditional role in portfolios going forward, providing a steady stream of returns and also dampening volatility, especially stock volatility. On the stock side, As I mentioned before, we definitely have growth stocks in the portfolio, but we think this is a really great time for value stocks in the United States. So a lot of financial services, even technology stocks fall in that growth bucket, as well as certain consumer product companies. And companies that generally should do well in good economic times and poor economic times with lower overall volatility than those growth stocks. And then, as I mentioned before, also on the small cap side. So very small companies that not a lot of people have heard of in lots of different industries are really great in portfolios today. And Steve, from our perspective, we also think it makes sense to be globally allocated. That hasn't been a popular stance here in the United States, with the United States stock market just continuing to go up. But we really do think there are other amazing investments in companies that are located outside of the United States. And we're pretty bullish on Europe generally in the year ahead, with things, kind of changing.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
ECB.
I was speaking to Beata Manthe, who's, I think she's Chief European Strategist at Citi yesterday, and she says the difference between US valuations and European valuations, we're talking about historic levels as well.
Huge
but I see it on a regular basis. I see it with the FTSE 100, I see it with the DAX, and yet there's a real issue with growth over this side of the Atlantic. There is concern about the cost of energy, about the lack of the size of the pool of investors as well. Where specifically do you like in Europe?
We really like France, Switzerland. We're allocated all over. And again, in some of those same industries that I mentioned before, consumer products, also in energy, financial services, technology. We do, as I mentioned before, thoughtful diversification. So we think spreading asset classes across a lot of different stocks will be helpful, especially in the year and years ahead. We need to remember that investments take time to mature. There's opportunities. We're investing on our clients' behalf for the next several decades, not for the next several weeks or months or years alone.
Point. You're an investor, not a day trader. Talking to day trader, my next story looks like it's Robin Hood. But Sandy, before we get to that, you talked about the role of bonds as well. I'm getting medium-term jitters, which I think might become short-term jitters, because I look at how much this government in the United Kingdom is spending. I look at the deficits in France. I look at the fact we haven't even got a government in Germany at the moment. It's such chaos. But I mostly look at the deficits that have built up under Biden and that could get even bigger under a Trump administration as well. I start worrying about wobbles in bond markets, because I know there was $1 trillion short out there at one point on US treasuries. That's going to come back, isn't it?
It should come back, but we definitely have our eye on the debt as well. With President Trump, there's a lot of initiatives that he has talked about that will help spur the economy, and some that could slow it down and sort of get in the way, and could end up increasing deficits here in the overall national debt. So it's important to keep an eye on it, but we do think that having bonds in a portfolio makes a lot of sense. Here in the United States, there's currently a tax preference toward holding municipal bonds. These are bonds in states and local municipalities, and we still feel very good about those. And then also on the corporate side as well, for clients who are holding bonds in tax exempt accounts like retirement plans.
Sandy, lovely to speak to you. It's Monday, isn't it? Of course, it's still Veterans Day for you. So nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. I really love chatting to you, Sandy, kicking off the show fantastically. Sandy Braga, who is the Chief Client Officer at Aspirant. Right, stick with CNBC, for all kinds of reasons actually, but also for the latest on crypto and fintech. Our US colleagues will speak to the Robin Hood CEO and co-founder Vlad Tenev. That's 1310 GMT. Before a conversation with Brian Armstrong, who just got richer. Have you seen what Coinbase has done? Ooh, well, anyway, he's the CEO and founder of Coinbase. That's at 1340. And counting is still ongoing in the US House of Representatives, with NBC News not yet able to project control of the chamber, which is a shame because I did it inadvertently about 3 days ago. Didn't mean to. The Republican Party is I got in trouble for that. The Republican Party is 4 seats away from a majority, which would complete a sweep of control in Congress. President-elect Donald Trump is expected to name the Senator Marco Rubio as his Secretary of State in the coming days, according to 3 sources familiar with the process who spoke to NBC. Trump could still change his mind on the appointment, they said. Mr. Trump has also picked Representative Mike Waltz as his national security advisor. According to 4 sources familiar with this decision, Waltz is a member of the U.S. House Armed Services, Foreign Affairs and Intelligence Committees, as well as the House China Task Force. Eamon Javers has more on some of the other positions filled by President-elect Mr. Trump as he prepares to return to the White House.
The Trump transition moving quickly on Monday as the president-elect is holed up at Mar-a-Lago making selections for his next administration. A couple of new names announced, including Lee Zeldin, the former congressman who will now be the head of the Environmental Protection Agency. Zeldin sending out a social media post saying, "We will restore U.S. energy dominance, revitalize our auto industry to bring back American jobs and make the U.S. the global leader of AI. We will do so while protecting access to clean air and clean water." Elise Stefanik, also selected by Donald Trump to be the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and a couple of other major positions that we're still waiting on, including U.S. Trade Representative, Secretary of Commerce, Treasury Secretary, a lot of those key positions still to come. Still, this is very, very quick action, and a real contrast between this year and what happened after Trump's first election back in 2016, in which the transition was sort of chaotic and there was jockeying for position. This time around feels much more disciplined, and they're moving much more quickly with some of these top names. Donald Trump here, of course, with Elon Musk for about a week now. Musk also at Mar-a-Lago just about every day over the past week, spending time with the president-elect, and we are told playing a key role in helping him select some of the personnel here. For CNBC Business News, I'm Eamon Javers in Palm Beach.
It's amazing, isn't it? I've spent my life saying, well, how does Elon Musk do all these jobs and do them so well? And he's an extraordinary individual, but now he's got another job, which seems to be consigliere or something to the president-elect. Extraordinary, isn't it? How I can only manage one job. Most people I know can only manage 1 or 2 or maybe 3, but he's got about 6 jobs, hasn't he? Anyway, wow. Okay, President-elect Trump is reportedly planning to select the South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem as Secretary for Homeland Security. This according to CNN, citing 2 sources familiar with the selection. Noem, who was previously tipped as a vice presidential hopeful, would be taking on a key role, with Trump looking to crack down on immigration into the United States. Well, coming up on the show, we're going to continue our coverage from COP29, where Dan will be speaking to Chile's Environment Minister. That conversation after the break. Plus, Infineon earnings are set to cross the wires at the bottom of the hour. We'll bring you those numbers, plus Sylvia's interview with their CFO, Sven Schneider. And we're going to be live at the Web Summit in Lisbon. All morning, Karen will be speaking to NIM Technologies Chief Security Officer Chelsea Manning at 8:30 GMT. Welcome back. Diplomats at COP29 have voted in favour of the global carbon market framework, which governs the trade of carbon credits. This is actually really important. Really important. For years we've been trying to get, progress on some form of carbon credit trading. Dan will talk about it in a minute. Anyway, paving the way for a UN-backed global market to fund green projects. Despite being hailed as an early win on the first day of the conference in Baku, critics, though, argued the rules were rushed through without proper process. Dan, how can we rush through something we've been talking about for 20 years without proper, crossing the T's and dotting the I's?
Indeed, and this was such a key focus at COP28 in Dubai as well. You'll recall that the IMF Managing Director, Kristalina Georgieva, also put forward an agenda to try and advance the conversation on carbon credits and on developing a carbon market. Well, finally, progress being made here at COP29. But let's put that to one side. I wanted to bring in our next guest. I'm very pleased to say that joining me here around the desk at COP29 in Baku is the Chilean Environment Minister, Mesa Rojas Carati. Minister, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having the opportunity to discuss at the start of this COP, right?
So let's walk through how you're reading the room right now. What do you make of progress so far, and what's the Chilean approach to addressing the climate challenge that's now before us?
Yeah. Okay, maybe just 2 sentences about Chile. Small country, developing country, highly vulnerable to climate change. But with a high level of ambition. We have a climate change law that says we're going to be carbon neutral at the latest by 2050, but also resilient to the negative effects of climate change. Why this? Because we see part of our development strategy is green development. So we see this as a very positive agenda and a necessary agenda to be able to give well-being to our people addressing climate change.
One of the key areas of focus at COP29 for the Azeris has been on climate financing, and I want your take on this as well. What is the Chilean position and role in meeting this new climate finance goal that the Azeris are trying to achieve and develop here?
Yeah, I mean, this is basically critical. There's no way we can mitigate, reduce our emissions, but also be prepared for the effects that our people are already experiencing today without financing. So this means, of course, that we need to align all the finance, from the big developing banks to the last little bank in a state in your country. But developing countries really need the physical space to do that, and for that we need developed countries to fulfill their commitment in the convention, in the Paris Agreement, to have this new quantified goal to do climate action.
The report suggests we're going to need to see trillions of dollars annually, though, and that financing gap is enormous. So how do you get the big polluters and these developed nations like the United States, like China, even like Saudi Arabia, for example, to pay up?
Well, you have to understand that whatever you pay now to address climate change, and both mitigation and adaptation will be an investment. So that the consequences of climate change are not becoming stronger and stronger. It's going to be a lot more expensive if we don't prepare now. I think that's the first thing that you have to consider. And the other thing is that you need to help the whole world to move into that direction. But for that, we need the leadership of developed countries. Do
you think we also need to, and maybe you didn't catch me there, but you need to change the definition of developed, developing, emerging in terms of who actually has to pay here? Because the criticism has been China is a very large, wealthy country, yet it doesn't have to pay because of its emerging market status, right? Would you like to see that changed?
I think it is what we need to do is develop countries to do their part, and in that way convince others to do their share as well. I think there has been, at the end of the day, when you have 200 countries that need to make decisions together, right, because this is a problem where we all are in here, this is a process of trust. And for that trust to be built, so that we can all feel that we are in there, whatever you had committed has to be delivered, and that's, I think, the only way that you can trust, and then you can then ask others to help as well. So I think that's a very critical point that will help us to advance here.
And ahead of COP30 in Brazil, countries are also being asked to update their nationally determined contribution, the NDCs, to keep 1.5 alive. Where does Chile stand on that process now, and when can we expect an update from you?
So we are in the process of updating our NDC. Chile has a climate change law that makes that process a quite structured process. It means that it's going to take us a bit longer than February next year, when NDCs are expected to be uploaded towards the convention, because we have a whole of government approach. This is an economy-wide NDC. We have all of greenhouse gases. So this means if we want to have a really strong NDC, we have to talk with everyone, so that everyone can feel that this is their NDC. This is our commitment for the next 10 years. So it's going to take longer, but it's going to be stronger.
Thank you for listening to Squawk Box Europe Express.
For more market-moving news, you can head to CNBC.com.
Or join us again on the show with Steve Sedgwick, Karen Cho, and myself, Arabile Kumete, weekdays on CNBC.